Hey, this is Frank. You're listening to an Origins episode of the Unbecoming Platypus podcast. Do you ever feel like you have friends who sometimes just don't get each other? This is a podcast that I recorded with two of my friends, Jake and Noah. We find out the hard ways we struggle to communicate better and sometimes succeed, but sometimes not. For years, the three of us have talked about communication and how it's sometimes easier said than done. Even when we're trying to be understanding, our well-meaning intentions often get lost in translation. We decided to share these conversations with the world. Join us as we find out what happens when three friends try to learn how to really talk to each other. All right. You were saying that you like Apple Wallet, right?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was saying. For sure. No,
What's
I don't
your favorite
have,
thing about
to be
it?
honest, I don't have anything against Apple Wallet except for it doesn't work.
Yeah. It's hard to have anything against it when you can't use it.
I mean, I tried, and this is not an exaggeration. I bet I tried 10 times or more to put cards into it. Different cards. I tried different ways.
Yeah.
Would not take any of them.
You have that device trust issue. That's what it is for sure.
I deleted the app because it won't work. So why have it on my phone?
I don't know, but if you take it to the Apple store, I'm sure there'll be a new phone.
That is so much work. Not worth it.
You'd be surprised. But if you're going to take it to the Apple store, do it when it's still in warranty.
Is it still in warranty?
Yeah. But for like 3 more days.
It's all right. I don't need Apple Wallet. It'll be all right. Do you think? I don't know. I don't need it. It's fine.
What?
I don't use digital wallet almost ever, but I do like, as I've said to you before, I like having a card or two in a digital wallet in case you forget your actual wallet or something. But it's all right. I guess if I forget my actual wallet, I will just be without money.
Yeah, which is like not even a real thing anymore.
Yeah, not really. And I can do other things, like I can create digital cards on like the X2 app or whatever. Like there's always a way to pay with something.
What's X2?
X1?
Yeah.
I don't know.
You downgraded them a number.
Well,
Just wondered if you maybe got a new card called X2.
I don't. This is how much I pay attention to these things. I don't care. Yeah, that card was forced upon me.
Yeah, for sure. I hate when that happens.
Okay. Anyway, how's Frank? What's Frank's week been like? Doing anything fun?
No, I don't think anything fun. Just all the same things as usual. I like them fine.
On this episode of the Unbecoming Platypus, I can't say our podcast name.
Platippies.
The Unbecoming Platypus podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Frank and Noah check in.
Yeah, how's your week? Did you do anything fun?
No, not really. All the same things.
Yeah. All right. Thanks for listening.
This has been an Origins episode.
Should we publish that one?
I'm sorry?
We should publish that.
Just that?
Just that.
It would be funny, and we don't have listeners anyway. So I think for our entertainment, it's perfect.
It's a free extra episode.
Yeah.
Do you want to do it again?
You want to do this one with video on YouTube? It'll be a short.
That's true. No. For some reason, I don't like doing video.
Today we're without Jacob, who we don't know what's wrong with him. This is how good of friends we are. He texted and said he wasn't going to be able to make it and he needed to go to the doctor. And we don't know if it's sickness, if it's injury, if it's something altogether different than that. We just know that he's not here.
Yeah. Usually illness and injury do cover the categories of reasons you go to the doctor, but
Usually. There may be another reason.
yeah.
Anyway, he's not here. So Frank and I are winging it. And so far, we're killing it, I think.
Yeah. This illness and injury thing reminds me of in Charleston, we would be dispatched by this voice that came over the station, and the radios. And they would dispatch you like, I don't know, something like, it was really just bad coding by the medical dispatchers, if I had to guess why it was really like this. But something like 70% of the calls were for sick person.
Oh, yeah.
And then there were other categories too, but they were much less frequent. So occasionally you'd get like penetrating injuries or something.
Oh, nice. That's for like when a piece of rod went through somebody's stomach or something.
Shot, stabbed, yeah, these kind of things.
I went with the more common one.
Sure. Yeah. For sure. So I had a partner who he said, I don't know why they don't just get rid of all the other categories and they can have sick person and hurt person.
For sure. It probably is helpful in the event that it is something out of the like quote unquote ordinary to at least have an idea upon arriving.
Yeah.
Maybe somebody has something that went through them.
Sure.
As opposed to they're just injured.
Yeah, they're all valuable. It was just the frequency with which they used sick person. It was just like a lazy cop out.
Mm. Well, yeah, that's true.
Like I can ask a bunch of medical questions, or I can hit sick person, and it doesn't ask me anything else, and I dispatch the ambulance.
What's the most severe thing that you came like to? You answered a sick person call. And the severity was just like massive.
Cardiac arrest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sick person.
Yeah, man. There's been a bunch of them, but I went to a man feeling lethargic who was dead for sure. I'm like, who said he was lethargic? And they're like, oh, yeah, he said that a few hours ago, but he just hasn't been moving. I'm like, oh, yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's probably the other thing is like the person making the call. You're asking a person who might be freaking out, likely is freaking out.
Yeah.
To like diagnose something in some way.
Well, they have good questions for it, but it really varies on the dispatch center and their protocols and stuff. Like some just are like, my job here is to get an ambulance dispatched. And some are like, my job is to do some triage and then get an ambulance or the right resources dispatched.
Mm. That's good.
Yeah.
Sick person. Anyway, Jake is either sick or injured or something else.
Sick or hurt person.
He's a sick or a hurt person, most likely. But he could have had a penetrating injury.
Yeah. Yeah, I do know way more about those categories and medical dispatch and the priority system now than I ever did as a paramedic.
Because of what you do now? Or other reasons? Okay.
Yeah, from integrating EPCRs and CADs and all that.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah.
When you're a paramedic, you're not really thinking necessarily about how the software and stuff works. You're just like...
Yeah, I mean, I thought about it on some level, but I didn't ever think about it.
You probably thought about it on more occasions than most people because you also have an interest in those things. But
right. But for sure, I didn't know all of the possible categories or how they came to be in the world. Now I do.
Sure.
Now I know way more about that. Anyways, Jake's dispatch complaint was, gentlemen, I apologize, but Jake is out for today. I've barely slept and I need to get myself to an urgent care this morning. Please proceed without me.
I kind of figured once Jake said he was out, this whole conversation would be about Alex Hormozy. I actually said it out loud to myself. If you want to know what it's like to be Noah, I didn't respond to Jake when he said, I didn't sleep and I'm going to miss the podcast, I said out loud to myself, well, I guess we're talking about Alex Hormozi.
Why do you think that?
I mean, that's my only experience podcasting solo with you. So,
did we talk about Alex Hormozi?
Yeah.
I thought we talked about Xerox.
We also talked about Xerox, but from the context, through the lens of Alex Hormozi.
What? Was it from the lens of Alex Hormozi?
Through an Alex Hormozi lens? I don't know. It was in relation to Alex Hormozi. Everything was. Everything is.
That's true.
Even James Clear.
Do you see those books at the top left?
Yeah.
You recognize them?
I've never seen them in person. But is it the $100 million leads?
Yeah, someone bought more copies than me.
And they put them up there.
Yeah, and they put them up there backwards in hopes people wouldn't recognize them, I think. Because they thought people might take them because of how high value they are.
Well, I'm thinking about taking one. If there's that many up there, they're just there for people to take, right?
Yeah, I think there's a reason they're backwards, though. None of the other books are backwards on that shelf.
Maybe there's a group working through. They're doing like a Bible study. It's the $100 million leads Bible study.
Yeah, you might be right.
And they're just keeping their books there instead of taking them home.
Yeah, because that'll help them study.
Well, they only study when they're together. They're not trying to get better on their own.
I see.
They're trying to get better together.
Yeah.
Oh, I like the thought of that. I came in here to print something. I very rarely have the need to print something. And I found myself needing to print something the other day. And I was like, well, I can technically get in there. I guess I'll go print this thing. And there was a group in here meeting. And I tried my best not to listen because I didn't care. But man, it definitely sounded like something like that. It sounded like business Bible study-ish is what I'm getting at. I don't think it was $100 million leads, but it sounded like that. And I remember thinking to myself, my God, I got to get away from this copy machine.
Yeah, there are interesting conversations that occur in this building.
Like, do you have a good example?
Yeah, there are a few, but no, I don't have any examples I can share publicly on the podcast.
The one time I ever worked from here, I met a lady who also works in marketing. And we had a long conversation in which she essentially judged my firm the whole time without outwardly judging my firm. And I was like, this is an interesting conversation when you first meet someone that you know nothing about.
Yeah. It definitely does give you more exposure to people and our tendencies as people. Like how frequent, do you think that person knows that that's how it went?
Oh, I have no idea.
Did she know that it was your company that she was talking about?
Yeah. Yeah. The only reason she knew about my company was because I told her.
Yeah.
Where I worked and what we do and stuff.
I know the person, and I had an interesting first impression with them as well.
I remember your first impression with them.
Yeah.
We won't talk about it. Unless you want to.
I just want to talk about what might be wrong with Jake.
That's a definitely multi-part series podcast. What's wrong with Jake? I mean, to be clear, mostly for Jake, it would be a multi-part podcast if we talked about that, about any of us. What's wrong with Frank? What's wrong with Noah? But it's funny to make fun of Jake because he's not here.
Yeah. What do you think's wrong with me?
Oh man, you know everything. That's That's the 8th thing I've been saying to Frank recently. To give a little context to the podcasters.
Yeah.
What do I think is wrong with you?
It's an interesting claim.
That something's wrong with you?
No. That I know everything.
Yeah, I don't think let's be clear. I don't think Frank knows everything. That's why I keep saying it. No, I don't actually think that. I don't actually think Frank thinks he knows everything. I'm talking to the podcasters.
I see that. It's going really well, it looks like, from here.
I'm sitting across from Frank. And instead of talking to Frank, I look down at my webcam and I talk to the podcasters.
Yeah.
Let me address our listeners for a moment.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, is that a real question? What's wrong with you?
I guess so, sure.
Oh,
yeah.
I don't think anything's wrong with you.
Oh, thanks.
No, I mean that. Like, I don't even really understand the question, if I'm honest.
Sure.
Because what does that mean? What's wrong with me?
Yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with me either. But there are lots of things they can improve, I suppose. I guess if that's what you wanted to say. That's a different question. But.
And it's just, it's interesting because I used to be a lot more up for conversations about sort of unanswerable questions. I liked to think about things that didn't really have an answer. And I still, in some ways, do. But I think I keep that way more internal these days because I also, as I've gotten older, I think I'm like, oh, what's the point of hashing that out when I know there really isn't an answer? Instead, I could just try to enjoy my life.
Right.
Instead of trying to answer the question. And this strikes me as one of those questions. Not what's wrong with me, but what does that even mean? Because it depends on the lens you're looking through.
Yeah.
What's wrong with you from your lens is going to be different than what's wrong with you from my lens. And it's going to be different from every other person on this planet. And it's all based on their experiences and their perceptions and their beliefs. And what does it mean? Yeah. And so we'd have to talk about what it means for 6 years before we can answer it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Or, yeah, for sure. Or there's just like the thing you think is wrong with me.
Yeah. Essentially, we have to have a agreed upon criteria to then decide if something is wrong or not.
Sure. So we didn't do any we didn't spend 6 years on what's wrong with Jake, but
we don't know. All we know is that it's probably a penetration injury.
Penetration injury. It's no longer a penetrating injury.
Penetrating.
Penetration injury.
Well, that's the joke.
Yeah, I get it.
No, man, I don't think anything's wrong with you. I think there are things that frustrate others about you, and that is dependent on the other.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, I can talk about my experience if you want. I'm happy to have the conversation. It doesn't mean anything other than in a particular day and time, I was frustrated by something, and it probably had something to do with other things in my life, not you.
Sure.
Because everything's about us, ultimately. Like our experience is almost always about us.
Oh, I thought you meant, for a second, everything in the world is about me and you.
Yeah. No, I mean everything in our experience is ultimately about us, not other people.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. That's a different perspective, but it's just a slight different. It's a shift because when someone does something that bothers me, I often think this is about them. And I used to be very much the other way. I used to be like, what did I do wrong? Like what? And now I'm always like, hey, they're not having a good day. I wonder what's going on.
Yeah,
because it's just unlikely that it has anything to do with me. And sometimes it does. Like, obviously I can create havoc in the world if I wanted to.
Your response has everything to do with you.
Right.
Their response has everything to do with them.
Yeah.
So, excuse me. So what frustrates me about Frank, for instance, has way less to do with you in reality and way more to do with me.
Sure.
Like, it could be anything. It could be what I've dealt with that day. It could be what I'm thinking about in that moment. It could be what I want to happen.
Yeah.
Could be what I don't want to happen, whatever. Like, it could be any of these things, but it's mostly me.
Sure.
Doesn't mean that there's no truth to the thing that frustrates me necessarily.
For sure.
Like, in a broader context. But usually it's not. I don't actually think you know everything. I don't think you actually think you know everything.
Sure.
But that does frustrate me often.
You're just awestruck by the amount of things I know.
No. I am. The thing that frustrates me in that situation is the certainty with which you know things, which I don't believe.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's weird. I mean, there are different things. There's a sort of joking certainty that I'll make about, like,
yeah,
if I'm not certain, that I do sometimes. It's just a joke. It's a threat.
Yeah, and I know I can tell the difference, but there are times that you say things as truth that are 100% not truth, but you're like, yeah, no, I'm right about this thing. And I'm like, no, you're not. And I think you're close. The thing that frustrates me is that I think you're closing yourself off to what actually could be by being so certain about something. And I don't know. I also will acknowledge that if we want to talk about the Enneagram for a moment, as an 8, the 5 is unhealthy for me. So the way that you see things sometimes for me is like a red flag. Like, for me personally, it's a red flag.
Sure.
So when I see the way that you're looking at a certain topic, it strikes me as like, oh, that's unhealthy behavior. Because if I was thinking that way, I'm probably stressed and, spiraling out of control or something.
Sure.
And so it just doesn't land well with me. That doesn't necessarily mean you're wrong for it, but I'm just telling you this is what I mean about perspective.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I'll
give you a good example.
Okay.
When my dad was dying, I'm not mad about this, but I noticed it. You were very much like, let me tell you what's happening to his body right now. Let me tell you. I mean, you didn't say those words. You did sort of. You texted me that was actually sort of like that. Like, hey, man, if you want to know what's happening, I can tell you what's happening, And I'm just going, no, I know he's dying.
Sure.
And I have an understanding of this. I don't need to know more of that. I'm just trying to grieve this moment. I totally understand where you're coming from, because understanding for you is comforting in some way, right?
Yeah. I even asked a few times, what would you want to know? Like, is there something you want to know?
Yeah. And I didn't need to know anything.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, I'm not saying you did something wrong. I'm just saying, for me, it was like, that's a weird thing to ask.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, there were two things I cared about. One, when you told me that they were like sending him to rehab,
mm-hmm.
I was very worried that you might have the wrong idea, because that seems so hopeful compared to the likelihoods. And I just wanted you to know, like, hey, he may not be going to rehab.
I didn't think he was going to rehab.
Sure. So that I just wanted to make sure you knew that. And then I just wanted to be available if you had questions, medical, like if you wanted to understand something better that was going on with them.
Sure.
Those were my only real goals with any of that.
Right. But even thinking from that sort of framework is different than a lot of people. Like I'm not trying to seek to understand the situation. I'm just in the situation, trying to get through it. Again, I'm not saying you did anything wrong, but it's a very clear, but between you and me, or let's say between the 8 and the 5, because I don't think it's a you and me thing necessarily. I think it's maybe a coping mechanism thing, or a behavioral thing or something. But there's a very clear line there where it's like, that's weird to me that's where your brain goes. I'm not saying you're wrong for your brain going there, but for me, it's like, oh, that's not even in my consciousness. And to bring it there, that sort of informational thing for me is unhealthy. So when I'm in a moment feeling it and living it, that's healthy. When I'm trying to seek information to feel better about it, unhealthy.
Yeah. I don't think I had any information that would make you feel better, just to be clear. Yeah,
but even by to feel better, I just mean to understand it better. So even if it means my dad's dying still, I just mean to make me feel better about the situation. Okay, I understand what's going on.
Yeah.
Because there is nothing that's going to change the situation. There's no information that's changing the situation. But when an 8 is unhealthy and they go to 5, we're just trying to find something to make us feel better in that moment.
Sure. Yeah. And I think that's a big difference between the 5's desire to understand versus like when you go.
Yeah, that's my whole point, is that for you, it's just kind of how you operate. For me,
but it's first principles. For me, it's not a response. Almost, I don't know if it's ever a response. I don't get into a situation and I'm like, I got to information my way out of this.
Yeah, I know. And that's exactly what I'm saying, is that I share those mechanisms, but I use them when I'm stressed and unhealthy.
Sure.
And so sometimes I think that, especially flowing this direction from you to me, I think that's where a lot of, like, when we butt heads, or when I butt heads with you, maybe, I think that's where it comes from. It's a lot of it has to do with that, the feeling of the 5 to me.
Sure.
So it's not really about you. It's about that coping mechanism for me.
Yeah.
And it feels unhealthy, or it feels wrong in some way to me. And so I'm like, no, I don't like that.
Sure.
Or that's not what I need. And I've learned over time, I just kind of don't let it bother me as much anymore. But when I didn't understand this nearly as much, it probably bothered me a lot more, because it just felt like I didn't have words for it. I didn't have an understanding of it. It just felt bad. So I'm like, no. And then I pressed back against it.
Sure.
As opposed to going, I know what's going on, I'm just going to let it go.
Yeah, makes sense.
But it's not a frank problem. It's not really a problem at all. It's just a difference.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. There are lots of reasons for that. I mean, I also ate ice cream with you a lot during that time. Mm-hmm. I tried to be present as well.
For sure, yeah.
I mean, I would much rather just be a resource, like an information resource. That feels way.
Yeah. Yeah, and I appreciate, I don't have any, I'm not complaining. I'm just telling you, that is one that stood out to me as an example of, like, the difference.
Yeah.
Every podcast, I can't clear my throat.
Same.
Not used to talking this much, I guess.
Yeah, true. Yeah, I don't know. People are weird for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think I see those differences in a lot of things, just because, because we respond and react to things differently. So even like we both have we have both lost a lot of weight in our lives and have had a lot of experience with different sort of like iterations of dieting and the way we eat and that sort of thing. And you are way more data driven than I am. I'm way more, I think I am way more sort of like personal feedback oriented. Like, how's my body responding to this? How do I feel? How does my body feel?
Sure.
It's always weird to me when you, like you've done the continuous glucose monitor in the past. You like the wearable, the Apple Watch and like data, and that's fine. That's you, but that would just get jumbled in my head. I'm way more like, how does my body feel when I do this?
Sure.
And that makes a lot of sense because innate's super intuitive. We feel things with our body. And so that's my sort of data source.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that must be nice.
Oh, it's nice sometimes. Yeah. I mean, I think there's ups and downs about both.
Yeah.
For sure.
I mean, each week I do a sort of review process where I look for areas that that are like my actions aren't matching my intention or something like this. And, that is usually when I notice how my body felt that week.
Interesting.
It's not, I'm not like in this moment, like, oh man, I'm kind of tired or hungry or something. I've never been like Pete. I've always been the kind of person that someone's like, are you cold? And I'm like, oh yeah, I guess so.
That's really interesting because there's an extreme for an 8. I don't know. I can only speak of my experience. I have no idea what other 8s feel, but I think this is connected to that. When I have heightened emotion, a lot of times I feel that in my body in some way. I have been shivering. 90 degrees outside and I've been shivering cold before because of a heightened emotion. And it could be, I've experienced it with several emotions. So it's not one in particular. Like it's been, sadness or fear or anger, or not usually anger. I don't think I've ever been cold because of anger.
Sure.
But it's a very real, like, I mean, I shouldn't be shivering right now, but I am, and I feel cold. I had a moment or a time of stress, like when I was thinking about leaving Helting to go to ADM. This is 10 years ago now, almost.
Mm-hmm.
I was really stressed about the decision because Helting treated me so well.
Yeah.
They felt sort of like family. And I had reasons that I wanted to go to ADM. I wanted the tuition assistance. I wanted better benefits. I wanted something more professional to put on my resume, I guess. There were reasons that I was really looking at it.
Sure.
And I was really stressed about it because I didn't know if it was the right thing. I didn't want to let down these people who felt like family to me. And I was very stressed about that decision. And I had this feeling in my tongue. It felt like my tongue had lumps in it.
Wow.
Like I would have told you there's lumps in my tongue.
Sure.
And then if I touched my tongue, it just feels like a normal tongue. But my tongue just sitting in my mouth felt like it had these massive lumps in it.
Yeah.
And even if I ran it through my teeth, for instance, I'd be like, there's lumps in my tongue. Tongue was fine. But I had no idea what was going on. I thought something was wrong with me. But I've learned as I've learned more about the Enneagram and learned more about listening to my body, I've learned that some of these things are just my body trying to tell me that something's wrong.
Sure.
And at that time my body was like, you are stressed about something, man. You know? So that's really interesting because it's like polar opposite from what you just described, which is I have to review to know what my body's feeling.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, it's the other thing that's close to getting me there is being on live video, which I just patently hate.
It's getting you more connected to your body.
Yeah, or to my real state. Like when I look in the camera, I'm like, oh, that doesn't seem like you're doing that well. Or wow, you seem really happy. It's very surprising sometimes the way I.
That's
look.
interesting.
Yeah.
You're going based off of like expression,
Or and just like, I don't know. It looks like you haven't slept much, or like.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a real difference between like it. I don't know if it's a difference because it's like there's an absence there. Like I don't know what's going on, and then sometimes I hop on a Zoom call or go live on social or something, and I'm like, "Wow, you look pretty tired, man. You might want to rest."
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah, that's complete opposite. It's weird. So to think about like, oh, I've got to, at the end of the week, I've got to review all of this to know how I was feeling. It's like super weird because I'm pretty aware all the time. I mean, of everything body related. Like I know my body's been feeling great lately. For a while I was dealing with the lower back thing, which I wouldn't say is 100%, but it's getting close.
Sure.
And I just feel good. Like I get out of bed and I'm like, I could go work out. I know I can push myself harder in these workouts now because I'm not worried that my back's going to just, break in half or something.
Sure. Yeah.
But I've learned to listen to that and not push myself. When I was younger, I probably pushed myself in ways that made injuries worse because I ignored those signals. And now I go, oh, if I notice it, then it's probably a problem and I should let off the gas a little bit,
Yeah. If you get on Zoom, are you ever surprised by what you see in your own image?
No.
Like never. That's never. Or you walk past the mirror or something.
Mm-mm.
That's weird.
No, I don't even fully understand that concept. Like I'm trying to wrap my mind around what you're saying. That's how foreign it is.
Really?
Yeah.
I think, man, I might have the wrong guy. I think Robin Williams talks about this mindfulness at some point, and he says it in a way that probably is better than me. I might send that to you, but he's like, you just like go in the bathroom and you're not really present, and you catch a glimpse of yourself in the mirror, and you're like, oh, that's what I look like right now.
I don't relate to that. That's weird.
Huh.
I mean, I'm not going to say never. I have before. I mean, at points in my life, looked in the mirror and go, wow, you've got like circles under your eyes or something. Yeah. But it's very specific to like a thing.
Sure.
It's not having to look at myself on a video to notice that maybe I look tired.
Sure.
Or maybe that I am tired is not something I can relate to at all.
Yeah. Well, Chris Voss talked about his first TV interview or something, and something was wrong with his hair, and it was like CNN or I don't know, some major news network or something. And they were interviewing him, and he's like in this room, and they're like, all right, just look at the camera. Would you prefer to have the monitor on or off? And he's like, I don't know, on's fine. So he's about to go live in like 6 seconds or something. It's counting down, and he sees in the monitor that something's wrong with his hair. So he spends the first few seconds of live video going like, and it's on the wrong, it's mirrored. So he's on the wrong side. Yeah. That's not what I'm talking about. That's like, there's a physical appearance thing wrong. It's like, oh wow, the aura of that human is different.
Yeah,
than I thought.
I get what you're
surprising.
saying. Yeah, I get what you're saying. But no, I don't really relate to that. No.
Sure.
I mean, I know how I'm feeling most of the time.
Must be nice.
Physically, at least. I don't know And I think these days I know how I'm feeling emotionally pretty well too, but that's also different than how I'm feeling physically. But I'm very in tune with how my body feels.
Sure.
Which is also, I also think that's why when I lost like the big weight, God, I don't know how long ago, 5 years ago or whenever that was, that really wasn't that hard in hindsight, because once I tuned into it, I mean, I think part of the reason that I got big was because I just didn't tune into, and I didn't understand that I could listen to my body in that way. I've learned a lot about that in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
But once I decided to lose weight, like I just tuned into mostly how my body felt on a regular basis when I eat things, when I exercise, when I sleep, and it wasn't that hard to lose that weight. Mostly because of that reason, I think, because I know, like, if I tuned in, I knew, if I eat this thing, I feel like crap. That probably means it's not good for me.
Right. Yeah. And that's a good insight. And I benefit from it as well. It's just not always obvious.
Right. Yeah. That's what I'm saying is like, for me, and I feel bad in some ways saying that, because a lot of people struggle, like losing weight's hard.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying I'm the best in the world at it, but when I decided to do it, I lost like 130 pounds total, something like that. And it just wasn't that hard once I tuned into how my body felt, because I was paying attention to those factors, not thinking about what can I eat, what can't I eat, how am I restricting myself? Oh, I've got to work out now. Those weren't my thoughts. My thoughts were, how does my body feel? How does my body respond to this thing? Whether it's exercise or food or sleep or any of these things. Like, how is my body feeling when I do this thing? And when you tune into that, when I tune into that, it just was super, super easy, intuitive, if you will.
Sure. Yeah. Jake has a lot to say about that.
Yeah. But I don't even mean intuitive eating necessarily. I mean, I just mean...
It was intuitive, right?
Yeah. And I'm having a similar experience now. I'm going to Curacao in a month to visit Amy and her parents. And, I want to look as good as I can for the beach. And so right now I'm eating super strictly. I'm exercising. I mean, I always work out 4 times a week, so that's not really that different, but I'm trying to be a little more intense, and I'm just feeling good right now. And I notice when I eat really clean, I notice how much better this feels.
Sure. I do too. That's
sure. Yeah. I mean, I think everybody does, but it's super, super noticeable. I'm like, why don't I always do this? Because I feel great right now.
Yeah.
And I think even my back healing and stuff is connected to that.
Definitely.
I mean, less inflammation and just letting my body be in a more optimal state, I guess. And it's very noticeable. I've had that thought many times in the last couple of weeks. Like, I feel so good. Why don't I do this all the time?
Yeah.
I
think I wish that I felt foods more quickly. There's a lag there that makes it really hard for me to track in a direct way. But by the time I notice like pain, like inflammation is worse, I've been eating off plan for days.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's still even in my situation, you still have to have some sort of like information logic, because I know, for instance, I've said to you many times, like eating ice cream, I love ice cream, but it also just doesn't make me feel bad.
Sure.
Like I don't feel super inflamed.
Right.
My stomach feels fine. I don't feel sick. I don't it doesn't change my bowel movements or whatever. Like it just doesn't make me feel bad.
Right.
And so I'm glad, because it is one of my favorite things to eat. So I don't eat ice cream regularly. And that's where this like information logic comes in. I still know, even though it doesn't make me feel bad, if I eat ice cream every day, I'm eating thousands of calories, and that's not good for me.
Sure. Yeah.
So you still have to, there's a balance.
Right.
But if I'm going to eat something that's less optimal, ice cream is way better for me than going and eating a plate of pasta, because I feel terrible when I eat pasta.
Sure. Yeah. I don't know.
But you know what I'm saying?
I do.
There are people that feel terrible when they eat ice cream.
Yeah, I guess. I don't feel that. There's nothing that feels like eating pasta. That is the worst thing anyone can do. It amazes me every time I see someone doing it. I'm like, what are you doing?
Yeah. But there are people that feel terrible when they eat ice cream in the same way that I feel terrible when I eat pasta.
Yeah, that's true.
And so I just try, my sort of number one rule is don't eat the things that make me feel terrible.
Yeah. Yeah. That's just, you're doing good reframing. I think you've really attached the pain of after to the event.
Yeah. Well, I think you can't discount the physiology either. I don't eat fried foods. So now when I eat them, they just don't taste as good as they used to. Yeah. So like if I eat some French fries, I go, I don't understand why I truly have this thought now. Anytime I eat a French fry, I'm like, I don't get it.
You can't.
I don't know why people eat these. I used to love fries.
You would never eat them unless you eat them.
So you can't discount physiology either. So that also changes over time. Maybe there was a time, definitely there was a time that sure, when I ate French fries, I really I enjoyed the taste. Now I'm just like, nah, this just doesn't even taste good.
I eat pasta on like a Valentine's Day dinner. That's about it usually. And, I don't want that or anything, but usually that's, Italian place. It's just a relationship thing or something. The last time I did it, it was like literally felt like I took drugs. Yeah. I was like, wow, this is crazy. Yeah. I've had some coping, like food as a coping mechanism. I don't know. I think as a child, it was a source of stability. So I used it a lot then. And I have like defense mechanisms around that automate sort of responses to stress to go to food. I hope to get to the point that I don't even feel like I need or would use that ever. Right now, I sort of have like a very small percentage of, I'll let myself like, if I really want a pumpkin thing, I'll go have one. I'd like to get to the point where I say there's no value in that thing for me. I don't feel like I'm there yet. I think I'll get there. I don't want to force it.
Here's another thing, and this is speculation because I don't know what it's like to be another person, but I'm very aware of the sort of like bodily anxiety, and I describe it this way for a reason. Bodily anxiety that comes with hunger. Because for me, that's how it feels. And I'm speculating that this is what turns into emotional eating for a lot of people. They don't recognize, it doesn't feel like bodily anxiety to them. It feels like some sort of emotion maybe, or you know what I mean? And so they turn to food to feel better, because really what their body's saying is you should eat, but they eat something. When they disconnect your body needing sustenance and turn it into an emotion, now you don't think about the sorts of things you're eating. And for me, it's very apparent. It does feel sort of, and I say bodily anxiety because it's not a mental or emotional anxiety for me at all. It is very bodily. I feel my body changes. I feel tense. I feel tension in my jaw and my tongue, but I know it's because I'm hungry and I should probably eat something. That disconnect from emotion allows me to go, okay, I just need to eat some beef or some eggs or something. It doesn't turn into, well, let me eat some ice cream.
Yeah. I mean, people develop in the ways they develop, which may not have ever had any processing there. So it's like, I don't know. I watched my parents fight, and then after they fought, they got food, and it made them feel better. And this is how things happen. And there was never any talk about the fight. There was just a boom stress relief. That could be how it develops for people or whatever. And so to put logic in there after years of that neural pathway working that way is like not going to be easy. But I think your point, which is very similar to this tweet that I saw yesterday that I loved, which is from Dave Dana. It says, "You've healed too much not to raise the bar on what you put into your body. With your mouth and your mind, if it makes you feel sluggish, bloated, stressed, tired, foggy, anxious, it's a no. If it doesn't improve you after you've consumed it, it's a no."
And the other piece of this, I think, is that disconnect allows me to then go, it is just hunger. I know that I'm hungry, but I can choose to eat something good and make that bodily anxiety go away. I can choose to live in that bodily anxiety for a little bit longer. And that makes me more aware of other things that help that bodily anxiety go away. So maybe I just need some water. Maybe I need some electrolytes. Maybe I need to go for a walk. And once my body breaks into fat stores, now the hunger's gone. Now the anxiety's gone. I'm way more in tune with these things because I don't have to fight with that emotional connection. And I'm lucky that I don't have to fight with that emotional connection. I don't take that for granted. But this is the thing that I experience, and I think a lot to do with because I'm a body type on the Enneagram. And I'm way more in tune with that sort of thing. That helps me a lot in those areas.
Yeah, makes sense.
Oh, well, this has been the Unbecoming Platypus podcast. Thanks for joining us. And if you have any thoughts on anything we talked about today, leave them in the comments. We'd love to hear from you.
Hey, it's Frank again. Thanks for listening to an Origins episode of the Unbecoming Platypus podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to our podcast to stay updated on future episodes. You can also check us out online at theunbecomingplatypus.com. We hope these conversations inspire you to improve your communication skills and deepen your connections with your own friends and loved ones. Until next time, this has been the Unbecoming Platypus podcast.